You could accept the fact that this city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
Exactly.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Just a couple of guys, a couple of microphones, and a heck of a lot of no. It's Football on the No with Jim and Joe.
What they say, it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Football on the No. I am Jim McPhee, and alongside of me is Mr. Joe DeCapita.
What's going on, Nodos? Welcome back for another edition of Football on the No Show. We are locked and loaded, ready to go. Super excited. Listen, you're not going to get the intel that you get anywhere else but other than here. This is the place to be if you want to talk football, if you want to get some insight and some true, honest insight. And we do that here. If you're new to the show, even if you just kind of stumbled on us today, do us a huge favor, head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment down below, wave hi, say hi, comment, ask a question, do whatever you got to do because, listen, we're the most interactive NFL talk show out there, and we're proud to say that because no one's proved us wrong yet. So until they do, welcome aboard, become a know-it-all, get dived in right now. This is the place to do it. And we're going to talk about something that I think people started to talk about today, but we knew about this a couple days before we even got here. So we're going to talk about like the NFL about to test first down technology for the preseason games that are upcoming. And if it ends up panning out and working out well, then they're going to move it into the regular season for this upcoming season, Jim. It's pretty exciting. And according to Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports, the NFL will test an optical tracking system during the preseason that is intended to make for a more accurate measuring system that reduces the amount of human error. And we all know we know all too well about the human error side of things with referees. If it works and is approved by those around the league, the NFL could use it as soon as this upcoming season in the regular season games. Now, that all being said, it's going to be pretty exciting because I feel like we've been looking for an alternative for the first downs, for something as far as like a judgment call is made. We as fans, we get irate, we get pissed off when referees in our eyes, they screwed the call up. That's definitely not a first down, but they gave it to them anyway, or vice versa. Like, we as fans just want the game to be called as true and honest as possible. And I know you're not always going to get every call right. But this is an effort and a direction that the NFL's taking to where, at least when it comes to first downs, they're going to be able to track where the ball is. And by doing so, they're going to have those electronic sensors they already have sensors inside the balls today, but that's usually tracked for speed of a player and stuff. That's how they get those stats to turn up. But now they're going to implement different type of sensors to where there'll be transmitters basically to kind of relay that information of where on the football field that ball is. Is it in fact a first down? Is it not? Is it just close? You know what I mean? Now they can be able to maybe get more accurate with the new information.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen technology like this with, tennis. I mean, that's one of the biggest things, too. People see it. It's like you can see where the ball hits. You know what I mean? When it comes down to it, when you're watching tennis and stuff, you can see where that ball, whether it's in bounds or not. And the fact that a sport like that has been using that technology for quite some time now. And the NFL, one of the biggest, organizations in the United States or even in the world at this point, not using technology like that seemed really, really crazy going and sticking to the old chain gang, that they like to call it. So this is definitely a step moving forward. We'll see how accurate it is. And they had said that in this article from Bleacher Report that the Giants and the Jets have already started using this technology a little bit, in the offseason last year, in the preseason, to try and test it out a little bit as well. And it's already in the stadium. So in order to do this for the rest of the NFL, they need to install some of this technology into the stadiums before the preseason starts and try it out. It's interesting to see how it goes because, again, everybody knows, officials spotting the ball on close plays has never been, really good for it. It's very frustration amongst players and players and fans all alike, especially when you see them when they're making the calls and they're out of a field of view. They're not the best position to make that call.
No.
So fans and players alike been frustrated about this whole thing. And of course, everybody remembers the index card thing. So I think that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, as you would say too, Joe, with some of this stuff. And we'll see. Technology, Joe, it's taken over now in the NFL, and we'll see what this does. If it's better, you're still going to see the chain gang there just in case, because we also know with technology, things don't go right, and maybe if something goes out or whatnot, they're there. Plus, aesthetically, it's there for people to see it. The chains are moving with it, and it's also just kind of a quick viewpoint for people to notice it with coaches and people on the television to see where it is, because again, they can bring up a screen somewhere, especially with the television broadcast, but how are people in the stadium or even coaches right there going to see whether it was a first down or not? Are they going to bring it up on the screen in the Jumbotron in the stadiums or what?
Well, they don't need to with this new technology. The ball is going to be placed just like you mentioned with tennis. It's going to be placed like that, and the reason why tennis implemented that a long time ago is because the ball was so fast you couldn't tell if it was in or out. The judges were making a call in the middle of the seat. There's no way they can see that accurately. No. And the same thing could be said now when you get scrums, where the referees have no way to see the ball, and they just make a call basically
That's
guessing. Now you're going to have true technology, and as long as it's, it's honed in and calibrated the right way, like there's no rhyme or reason to not think this isn't going to be a success. So I think this is a great idea moving forward, and I'm excited to see it during the preseason and how it's going to affect maybe even the game. It might even speed up the game because now you're talking about not just first downs, but then also talk about ball placement, where the ball actually is. There's not going to be more guessing or where the referees can just be like, oh, it's a half yard back, it's a half yard forward. Now it's going to be pretty much all honed in at this point.
Will they be able to challenge the spot of the ball still? Are
you can challenge it, but survey says, ding, it's here at the 22-yard line. But we got a know-it-all in the house here. Chris Simpson. What's going on, bro? Welcome to the show. He goes, Giants don't get a chance for first downs.
Oh, man, that hurts.
He's a Giants fan, by the way.
Hashtag know-it-all.
I know. Like you said, so you won't know. We'll just be able to track how far backwards the ball is going, right, Chris? So we'll see. We'll see, along with all those, Daniel Jones sacks, and stuff. So
yeah, right. But that's something new and exciting to look at for preseason. I feel like this is kind of like one of those things one of those type of stories that might kind of go under the sheets and kind of be forgotten about when preseason gets here.
Yeah.
But I think this is kind of interesting to see how they work it in an actual game setting. Are they going to be efficient with it? Are they going to be second guessing it? Like, especially the referees. Like, I think the referees would welcome a technology like this because now it's taking that judgment call out of their hands, and it's like, hey, no, it's not our fault anymore. This is where the ball is, So I think that's going to be pretty exciting for them as well. So
yeah, and they said also if it doesn't really work out or whatever in the preseason, they'll push it back to 2025. But then that shows you that they are advancing with this either way. You know what I mean? So they're like, if we don't try it this year for the full season, next year is going to be we're going to do it again.
Yeah. In other words, they're using a bigger scale to see how it works in a real game setting. Because like you just said, Jets and Giants have been using this technology, but now it's going to be in a real game setting. If it all works out relatively seamlessly and there's no real hiccups, there's going to be some here and there, but they work out all the bugs by the time regular season's here. It's gonna go. We're gonna be seeing that upcoming this year.
Yeah, definitely. And again, spring talks were just happening through the spring league meetings and stuff, and they're bringing up a lot of different things. I think some of the interesting stuff is their take on ownership moving forward because they're realizing
gonna
the
change
fact
it.
that ownership is hard to attain right now. You know, I mean, with how much value these teams are getting now, even though like
crazy.
they kind of look at it as like the Commanders were not a great team, you know, and that went for a bunch, you know, over a couple billion, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it is crazy. So they're like, how many people can actually afford to go get a team, you know, if it's
Right.
not just passed down through,
Family
relatives,
or something
family
like
and things
that,
like
yeah.
that, you know? So, and so many different wealth groups buying these. So they're talking about selling off, you know, shares of it and being a private investor into it. So that's something interesting moving forward, I think, for the NFL too, to kind of keep ownership there and more attainable.
I mean,
And-
that's always been around, the minority ownership part of it. Like, that's why people, like, when Magic Johnson was looking to get into it and everything, but obviously he wasn't going to have enough to kind of, he tried to, like, partner up with a couple other celebrities to make it a bigger chunk purchase, but he ended up with Washington, you know? So, and he bought a small piece of it, and he's involved, but again, you're not going to be the sole owner or the decision maker until you are really going to be buying that thing. Like the dude from Amazon, you know what I mean? That guy kind of had all the money in the world, so of course he could afford to do something like that. So unless you're making extraordinary amounts of money that you don't know what to do with, like, you're never going to be in the realm of possibility of owning a team. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is like, I feel like in the future there will no longer be like a sole ownership anymore. Like, yeah, there's always going to be a decision maker, but at the same time, it's getting harder and harder to get to that point. Like, we saw what the Commanders sold for, and everybody's value keeps going up because of how popular the NFL is, because the amount of money and revenue that they're able to generate year in and year out is absurd. So billions upon billions of dollars, and it just keeps getting bigger every single year. So after COVID, they kind of just 2 years later, they're stronger than ever. So that the price tags, everything keeps going up. So at some point, there's going to be a shift in that. Just like we're alluding to, is where you might have like maybe almost like a panel where it'd be like a board at some point, where like it's not going to be just one shot caller to end all shot callers. It might be like a group effort at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And then of course, again, discussing the fact that they're looking at 18 games moving forward, and you know, we all knew something like this was going to happen. Again, nothing's official yet. They haven't really voted on anything. It's just discussions they're kicking around.
No, it's just Roger Goodell said something, and now someone ran with it.
Running with it, which
the long-term goal.
See that, you know,
the long-term goal is 18 because they want to do more regular games, but by doing that, you got to get rid of something.
Yeah.
So
and that's what
preseason
they
games.
said, preseason games. So I mean, I don't know. It's the fact that they've changed preseason games and just kind of swapped them out with kind of like the joint practices. That's kind of making up for the fact of not having the preseason game, I guess, in a sense, is their way of thinking about it.
I don't think so. I mean, joint practices have been around for years and years. Like, that's not anything relatively new. Teams still do that because they want to get a sense before the games even are here. They want to get a sense of how competitive is the roster versus another team, you know, and the fact that you need someone else to go up against anyway, because that other team that you're going up against in practice is going to maybe show some glaring holes that you didn't think you had. And then as you get into the preseason games where it's a little bit more serious, now like guys are fighting for jobs, they're really going all in, and you know, I just feel like if you take away more preseason games, like they already took away one, now if they take away another, now you got 2 preseason games to get ready for the regular season. And if you extend it, like they're talking about, to 18 games, you only have 2 preseason games to get it right, and not to mention figure out who you're cutting. Like, it's very limited on, like, you got to figure out in those 2 games, like, all right, well, who's better, who's good, better, and best at this point for a roster. It's going to be like basically throwing darts at a dartboard saying, oh, well, you know, out of these 4 corners, anybody. And it might rush the judgment for the coaches to where they might make a lot of mistakes in terms of creating a roster to try to win in the regular season. Not to mention, think about the beginning of the regular season now. You didn't have as many games to prepare. You only had 2. Now you might see some sloppy play for the first 2 to 3 weeks of the actual regular season where it counts the most. So I feel like it might even hurt the game a little bit in terms of performance, especially early in the season. And then you're going to make it's already bad enough that they're playing 17 games and breaking their bodies down. By the time the season's over, they're hobbling around trying to get healthy again for the following year. So I think it's kind of crazy that they're even contemplating putting another game on the regular season schedule. But again, it's a business, and they're trying to make even more money, and they know they can do that by adding another regular season game.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see moving forward with that stuff as they investigate some of this stuff and see what they want to do. All right, so there's still a lot of available free agents out there, Joe. So, I mean, before the season gets started here, somebody's going to land somewhere, and we're going to go through a kind of list here. We found it from NFL Trade Rumors. You guys can look along with us, too, as well, and play pick up or pass. We're going to look at some of the available free agents right now and see whether teams should pick them up or just kind of pass on them and just leave them out there. You know what I mean? So, Joe, you want to start this one off?
So
how
first,
many you want to do? You want to do? This has a list of like 100, but we're not going to do.
We're not going to do
right?
100, but like I feel like there's guys that we need to talk about, especially in the top 10, where some people have differing opinions on, think they could still play. Some people don't. I mean, that's the thing. And then each guy has their own different thing. So, like, top 10, let's just go through them. Mm-hmm. Connor Williams is rated the number 1 free agent available now.
Yep.
Connor Williams is only 27 years old. He's a center, can play guard too, from the Miami Dolphins. But he had a catastrophic injury last season. It's still kind of hindering him right now. He's not 100% healthy. And that's really the reason why he hasn't signed with anybody, is because of that injury is still lingering around. And you don't want to sign an already injured player, but if he comes back healthy, you potentially could get a guy, low ball money, like veteran league minimum contract, a prove it year, 1 year deal. And if he pans out, now you got yourself a stud that you can kind of re-sign for the long haul and be part of that offensive line. So for me, for Connor Williams, it's kind of a double-edged sword. But I like the opportunity to roll the dice on a 27-year-old offensive lineman that everybody needs help on the offensive line. Sign him low. Once he gets healthy, he'll participate this season. He'll probably be more into like week 4 or 5 is when he'll be ready to go. And then see what you have in him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the same kind of thing has been a guy that's kind of been a little bit injury prone. But again, if you happen to find yourself in that spot where you need a guy, I think he's a good fix. And still fairly young, too, 27 years old, yeah. So I'm going to be, I guess, pick up then, right?
Yes, I think so.
All right. What do you got?
Xavier Howard, ranked 2nd overall cornerback for, the Miami Dolphins. But here's the interesting thing is this dude's 31 years old. And the problem with him is we talk about injuries with Connor Williams this past year. Xavier Howard's got a Rolodex of injuries, like a whole list of him being injured and missing, not just missing games, but missing seasons. Late in his career, at 31 years old, if he was 100% healthy and you could guarantee me that he never was going to get injured again until he retired in a couple of years, and I'd be like, okay, I give him a shot. But the fact that he has such a laundry list of injuries and being 31 years old, he's not very reliable, so I would end up passing on him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say the same thing, too. I'm going to pass on him as well, again, because, I mean, what are you going to get? You pick him up quick, and then he's injured again, so you just grab him for nothing. So I'm going to do the same thing on this one. All right, Joe, number 3.
Justin Simmons, safety from the Denver Broncos. And the reason why he ended up getting released wasn't because he had a down year or anything like that. Guy remained healthy. He just salary. It's really what it came down to. Denver wanted to move on, wanted to get a little bit cheaper in that department, and they moved on from Justin Simmons, who former all-pro safety. Like, the guy's only 30 years old, about to be, I think, 31 when the season gets around here or in the middle of it. But nonetheless, a very, very good veteran player at the safety position where there's always teams looking for safeties, especially guys that can upgrade that position for you. So to me, Justin Simmons is a guy that I am absolutely shocked is still out there to this day. I definitely think he's going to be one of those first free agents that ends up signing somewhere because he has so much more to offer that I would definitely pick him up in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Same thing again. I'm going to go with pickup. Get a team who might need one here and there, and then also to kind of add a little bit of that, veteran presence here in the backfield for a team that might need just that little bit of extra help here at the safety position. Next, number 4, we got Stephon Gilmore. Again, lifelong Patriot stuff, but then a little stint there with Dallas. I know they were even speculating, that he was going to come back to Dallas at one point. We're not seeing him right now. He's still out there. He's older though. For me, I mean, he was okay. I think with Dallas, I don't think it was spectacular like a lot of people were thinking, or at least Dallas fans. But they're a little delirious altogether. For me, if I'm him, I'm just signing a one-day contract with the Patriots and walking away.
Yeah, I mean, also had a tenure with the Colts. The problem with Gilmore is the fact that his age. It's just bottom line.
Yeah.
He's 33 years old. Yes, he's had hampering injuries before, missed a little bit of time here and there, but nonetheless has been available for a lot of the teams that he's been on. So solid player at this point in his career, but not overwhelmingly good anymore. Has definitely slowed down a step in terms of covering guys, down the field. So that's where he tends to get burnt when you got these faster receivers that are just kind of just running right by him. No longer can stay with those type of players anymore. So Gilmore to me is a guy where I'm actually not surprised he's out there still, but also I'm a little surprised that they have him so high up on the list.
Yeah, right. That is true.
So for me, I would definitely pass on Gilmore. I don't think he's going to add too much. I understand the veteran leadership type deal. Maybe he can help out a young corner. Maybe you sign him league veteran minimum just to kind of be a teacher for a young corner coming in. But other than that, I would definitely pass on him.
All right, next up we've got Steven Nelson here, cornerback from the Houston Texans. Again, 31 years old, and again, once you start getting that age too at corners too, it's a little tougher to kind of stay on those teams again, unless you are that good. I'm not sure about Nelson finding a teammate might, but it depends on where depth is and injuries, I'd say.
Steven Nelson, I'm kind of surprised he's still available. He's a phenomenal nickel corner. And that's really where he excels. He's not an outside corner. He's a nickel corner. And a lot of teams kind of overlook that sometimes when it comes to building their rosters. They're always looking for the shutdown guy on the outside. And I understand why the viewpoint goes that direction. But Steven Nelson, don't forget, you do need a third guy. You do need a guy to lock up inside with a lot of quicker receivers there. So Steven Nelson out there, still at 31 years old, still can get it done, has stayed pretty healthy his whole career, does offer some good talent for any team that is still in need of a third corner. So I expect him to be picked up, definitely.
All right, next up we've got number 6, Corey Davis. Corey Davis, again, Titans. He used to play for the Titans stuff again with the Jets. Expected to be something there with the Jets. Had a little bit flashes early on with the Jets, but then nothing since. 29 years old now as a wide receiver. Hasn't really showed anything in years. I'm passing on this all day.
Corey, you had a good run, bro. Even though he's still only 29 years old, if you were in dire straits and definitely needed to pick up a wide receiver, I'd say go for it because you're not really going to lose much. You're not going to spend a whole lot of money on this guy. It's going to be a low ball contract, 1-year deal, even if you're looking for depth. But other than that, I'm surprised he's this high on the list, but I mean, it is what it is, right? Like Corey Davis, 29, is what it is. I wouldn't pick him up personally. I think you pass on this guy and look for someone else. Maybe you could find someone that's a little bit younger that shows promise.
All right, next up we got DJ Humphries. Joe, what do you think about that?
Left tackle. I mean, everybody's looking for tackles. I hear Kansas City, definitely could add another veteran there for competition. Right now they have a second-year player competing for that left tackle spot, and also they drafted one in Kingsley, Sumatea, who is going to compete for that left tackle job. But, hey, what's it hurt? Add another body there. You're the Kansas City Chiefs. You're going to be looking to make another run. grab a veteran, a guy that might still have some tread left on the tires, only 30 years old as an offensive lineman. You're seeing a lot of linemen go into their mid-30s and still play great football. So Humphries, maybe he could win the job. You know, I think Kansas City would be an ideal situation for a guy like DJ Humphries to show that he could still play, maybe even, in fact, win a starting job there. So, yeah, everybody's always looking for offensive line. I'm not surprised why he's in the top 10 because it's a much-needed position for a lot of people. And what's the – like, even if you bring this guy in not as a starter, but maybe even just a backup role, like, guys want a job. If he still wants to play, he's willing to take the deal.
Yeah, I can agree
I'd
with
pick
you
him
on
up.
that one too. Yeah, definitely. All right, number 8. Who do we got here, Joe?
Charles Leno, another left tackle, you know, and again, a guy that's done a satisfactory job, is not a guy that's going to come in and be anything elite for you, but a guy that's going to be solid and hold it down, you know, for the most part. Like, he's not going to do extremely well against elite pass rushers or DNs, but he can take care of everybody else. And I feel like it's another depth move, like where you could bring this guy, he could still compete for the left tackle spot, and at the very least, even if he doesn't win, you got yourself a really good backup.
Yeah, he did pretty well for Washington. It's just funny when you see some of these guys. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, he's 32. I guess he's getting up there now. Recognizable names again, solid. Again, that's why it's justified that they're in the top 10 at this point. And like you said, you could always use a tackle somewhere. Next up at number 9, we got Quandre Diggs, the safety here, Joe, from Seattle.
Yeah. I'm surprised.
Yeah, right. You know, but and again, what's funny is with the safety position too, you can be older and stuff and still be serviceable again, because we've seen a lot of different, you know, corners, transfer to
safety, especially when they're older,
successful. So.
Right. Quandre Diggs is no exception. This guy has lived at safety and has done a tremendous job there. Like, just formerly of the Seattle Seahawks, he is only 31 years old. I don't think he's really lost a step. I mean, in fact, he had a phenomenal year last year, getting plenty of interceptions for the Seattle Seahawks without Jamal Adams being around. And I'm surprised. I'm surprised that, one, the Seattle Seahawks were probably like, go ahead, test free agency. And now that he's still there, maybe they bring him back. You know, maybe they bring him back on a cheaper deal, or someone else could bring him in and say, hey, listen, we'll let you compete for the job and prove it to us that you still got it. You know, I would definitely pick him up, though. He's definitely worth it. Yep. And his following right after him is Eddie Jackson. Eddie Jackson from the Chicago Bears. He's, again, we talk about, like, once you get 30, it's almost like everyone thinks you're dead. But there are exceptions. Another guy like Eddie Jackson. Eddie Jackson's a former Pro Bowler at safety, especially for the Bears. A guy that can do both things. You know, great tackler, great run support, great at coverage. Like, he does a lot of things really well. So anybody looking for a guy to even bring in and start right away, Eddie Jackson, I feel like would be a good place to start. And give him a short-term deal. If he's looking for like a 2 or 3 year deal, maybe you can come to an agreement where it's like not going to kill the team at all, and it's going to be a low-end contract, or you just bring him in on a prove-it deal. I think that's another talented player that I would definitely pick up.
Yeah, definitely a good veteran. It's been pretty good for a very long time. So a guy that could be definitely serviceable for a lot of teams out there.
Yeah, and after the top 10, then we can kind of just like filter through it and just pick guys that might be fun to debate about. Like, I know Adoree Jackson is one for me, corner from formerly the Giants, and a guy that had a decent season with the Giants, is still out there in free agency. I'm a little surprised with how the cornerback market, you know, kind of finally settled, and the fact that Adoree Jackson is still available, a guy who's only 28 years old, and has a lot to offer for the right team. Obviously, not every team is going to be excited or thrilled to pick him up because he fits certain schemes. But Adoree Jackson, to me, is one of those talents that started his career at Tennessee, you know, showed what he could do there, but then the injury bug came calling and found his way to free agency and has bounced around a couple teams and has done okay, you know, has done pretty good for himself, but now only 28 years old, a guy that, even though teams have went crazy for corners in the draft this past draft, but now it's like the teams that weren't able to get those corners, why aren't you kind of making some phone calls for Dory Jackson. Try to bring him in on a prove-it deal and very low-ball deal, league veteran minimum deal, that it'll be super, financially it makes sense. And then who knows, you might get yourself a really good player for a little bit of money. So that's surprising to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Dory Jackson, for me, again, with it being able to see him a lot here for being a Giants fan and be up here in upstate New York. Again, spotty at times. It seems like he'd be all right to lock it down, and then other times it seemed like he didn't know what the hell he was doing. So it was kind of strange because, again, when he was brought on to the Giants, I was excited. I'm like, oh, yeah, this guy's been pretty decent for a while. But seeing, his ups and downs was pretty interesting, and I think that's why he is now here in the free agent category here.
Yeah,
so
a lot of that has to do with the defensive scheme that they were playing in. Didn't really fit him to a T until you ask him to just play man-to-man. That's where he kind of really excels. He doesn't really excel in zone. So whenever he was asked to do that, he would struggle, even with Tennessee. That was a kind of like a thing for him. So if you're going to bring him in to play man coverage, bump and run, that's where he really excels. So that's when we go and talk about like where some places he might not fit. He's definitely not going to be a Steeler. Other than that, David Bakhtiari is always a big name, fun name to talk about. A guy who actually just recently got 100% cleared by a very renowned doctor from the NFL, saying that he's 100% full go with no limitations at all and is 100% healthy. Now, the interesting part of all this is that basically the huge, thick book of his injuries that he's had in his career is really going to come back to haunt him. Even though he's been cleared, has a clean bill of health, dude, you just weren't available for the Green Bay Packers enough to where now you're 32, probably going to be 33 in the season. And I don't know, does anybody really roll the dice on him? Because he really, it feels like the last 3 or 4 years, he's just always missed the seasons. Like there's always been a problem of staying on the football field. So to me, it's like, honestly, because of all that stacked against him, if I'm a team, I don't have complete confidence in even bringing him in as even a depth piece. So I would kind of stay away from David. Tegan's in the show. What's up, Tegan? How you doing, bro? He said, "Hey, Joe, I found a center for you guys." Nice.
Who are we on now, Joe? I guess
after that, we don't need to talk about Michael Thomas, even though that's a big name. I don't see him signing anywhere, to be honest. Too many issues off the field. You got Dalton Risner, I think, is an interesting player who started last year. Was a big time contributor for the Denver Broncos before that for many years. Good starting guard, not a great guard, but a good starting guard that can come in and compete. 29 years old. I mean, that's someone that I feel like I'm surprised he's still available, but he is. Yannick Ngakoue, another one. Edge rusher. Not if you're getting him to be a complete D-end, he's not. He's just a pass rusher. That's all he is. So if you're bringing him in to like play both the run and the pass, it's not going to work out. He's a little bit limited. You know what?
One thing I think is interesting too with Calais Campbell is just the fact that how old he is. He's been fairly productive still. He's averaging at least 6.5 sacks a season, and I think again he's kind of just holding out. He's not holding out for money or anything like that. He's looking to try and pick the right type of team that might need him just to join on. Much like kind of like Bobby Wagner did a little bit. Towards the end of his career here to try and bandwagon a team. Like if all of a sudden, the Chiefs are there and they need somebody else on there, he's like, I'll join with you guys. Somebody that's going to make a push. So I see Calais Campbell staying out there for a while and then finding a spot that's with a contender. Maybe Baltimore again.
I think what's going to happen there is it's going to be an injury thing. No one's going to be knocking down the door for a 38-year-old D tackle. Yes, still productive for his age and all that. But again, he's an interesting athlete because he is so gigantic and tall, but he plays D tackle, and it's like he doesn't fit everybody in what they want to do. It almost kind of makes me think that like he is going to be one of those guys where he's going to come on the cheap, but it's going to be whoever has injury issues on the D-line is where that's going to come to fruition. But I do like Calais. I like him.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of a guy that's still one of those older guys where he could still kind of find a spot, I think. That's still because he's been fairly productive still. Some of these guys, it's because of injuries. Some of it's because of money. You know what I mean? Again, Michael Thomas is injury prone. Carl Lawson only played 6 games last year. Things like that. Nick Gates, again, a major injury when he was with the Giants and stuff, and since then hasn't done too well. So it's some of those guys is that, Yannick Ngakoue floating around the different teams. I thought he was going to find a team early on, and then all of a sudden, I think maybe it was rumors or something like that. It didn't make it out, so now he's still out there, which is, I think, interesting.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Is like it's a buyer's market at this point. So like teams are going to be really nitpicky on who they bring in because they have to, they got to fit their scheme. They got to fit what they're looking for in a player. Yannick Ngakoue is so limited. Like if you were bringing him in as just a pass rusher, he's going to go in on pass rushing downs only and rotate in. I feel like somebody would have already signed him up already. Like, because that's what he is. He's only a pass rusher. If you're looking for someone that can go in and maybe spell someone and still not worry about, Yannick's in there, he can stop the run too, he's not your guy. So, because he's so limited in his play, that's going to kind of hinder him on finding another team to go to.
I think one of the interesting guys here for me, too, is former Buffalo safety Micah Hyde. That guy was always pretty productive here, too, and like a ball hawk for the Buffalo Bills. Yes, he's 33, but like you said, at safety position, a lot of teams could use a guy like him still, and he could still definitely be very productive for them. I could see him potentially finding a spot on a team, too, to sign in. Maybe, again, just because, Buffalo, former Buffalo ties, finds a spot with the Giants, something like that too as well, not out of the realm.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but there's a reason why sometimes there's reasons why when teams move on from free agents, especially when they're a little older, that teams view them as like, well, I don't know, like it's great for nostalgia reasons for fans to keep a guy because he was great in his prime. But now it might be getting to that point where like there's a little dip in production. There's a little dip in his coverage ability or him coming down to play run support where the Bills are like, we'd like to bring you back. You can go test free agency. We'd like to bring you back, but if we have room, we'll sign you back as a depth piece. You know what I mean? It's a sad part in a player's career, but in fact, that's what Micah Hyde's dealing with right now is not having a whole lot of interest in him, and the Bills even said, we're open to bringing him back, which means like, yeah, if someone gets hurt in training camp, we'll bring him back. Yeah. But it's not like, total confidence and like, oh, yeah, definitely that's going to all work itself out. So some guys, when they get into their mid-30s or early 30s, a lot of people kind of tend to forget about them because they just assume that the production is going to fall off. But Micah Hyde is a good one to think about, especially for maybe a team that has an injury that pops up, maybe in training camp. You bring a guy like that, a veteran guy that you can kind of plug and play. Tegan also said, love you, brother. Keep up the good work. Love you too, bro. Keep tuning in.
Yep, definitely. And a lot of these guys, too, when you start looking down this top list where they are, injuries again, and just getting older and lack of production. I'm surprised they even get Marcus Golden, some of those guys out there,
See, like that's the thing too, is like guys like Marcus Golden, again, a guy who's now becoming a little bit of a journeyman free agent. Like every single year, a team is not willing to give this guy a 2 or 3 year deal to kind of keep him there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So like to me, it's showing me a lot that every team that has signed him to play for them, it's almost like they're like, well, 1 year was nice. We're not really sold on him. Like, we're good. So that to me tells me that the league views him the same way. Even though he goes team to team, he does help out. Don't get me wrong. He's a decent player, but every team after that year is like, yeah, we're good. We're going to find someone else, So
yeah, I mean, and that's a good way to talk about it. To talk about journeyman, free agent, that's what a lot of these guys are. Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook now, even Cam Akers floating around, Frank Clark floating to different teams. These are just, Patrick Peterson again now being older in his position, floating around.
Well, Peterson is
he's
definitely lost a step.
Oh
100%.
yeah, absolutely.
Like there's some guys that you just mentioned though too. This is the first time they've gone to free agency in quite some time, where like a Kareem Hunt, like formerly with the Chiefs, got into trouble a little bit. Then he ends up locking with Cleveland, has been with Cleveland for a few years, and now he's testing free agency for a second time in his career, where a little bit older, but still. You talk about Kareem Hunt, a guy who has been productive for the Browns and still could be for another team, which I know running back is not as valued as it once was, but again, you could bring a potential starter or at least a guy who can rotate in there and give you every facet of the running back game that he can offer, which I think is beneficial for someone. You think about the Carolina Panthers, for God's sakes. They drafted Jonathan Brooks, and they have Chuba Hubbard. Like, unless Brooks gets healthy quickly like we're expecting him to for training camp, that's the only real threat I feel like they have. Chuba Hubbard's the average running back, but nobody's stellar. So why not bring in a guy, Kareem Hunt, to compete too?
I think one of the interesting names here and that are in the top 50 is Ryan Tannehill out there. A guy that, again,
quarterback
was saying he was going to fight for his position there, with Tennessee and stuff. And, they drafted, multiple quarterbacks and, it eventually replaced. But still, I think if a team is looking for like, one of those veteran quarterbacks that, still played well in his, latter part of his years here,
right.
Somebody willing to bring in, at least for a solid backup. It's funny the fact that we see a Joe Flacco, find a spot on a team now who was just on the couch last season before he went with the
Jets,
Browns
or the Browns.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And now Ryan Tannehill, not that far out, sitting out, and he's still out here. And why is that? So I mean, I could see him landing a spot, as a veteran in some of these teams here. Why not? Even with Seattle at this point too, where they are with Geno Smith. What if Geno Smith starts to turn into the old Geno Smith at one point, or just has a down year? You get Ryan Tannehill over there to help you out and compete for the division.
Yeah, I don't think Ryan Tannehill fits that offense, though. Like, the thing for Tannehill is that's it. That's the reason why he's still out there, is that he doesn't fit a whole lot of offenses to where he thrives on the play-action pass. That's what he's done with Miami Dolphins when they drafted him, and then he ends up with Tennessee, is he didn't have to be seen as this two-way player. Like, he would have to, like, you definitely have to do a lot of passes just straight up in the pocket, and then also you do the handoffs. It was more like the offense fits him perfectly when the running back's more involved and not so much the quarterback. So for Tannehill, it's going to be a niche somewhere. And what I kind of was thinking about for Tannehill is the fact that why doesn't a team like Washington, who has drafted Jaden Daniels, or a team like Chicago, who has drafted Caleb Williams, bring a guy in like Ryan Tannehill, where they are going to rely on the run a little bit more, especially this year, and you're not going to ask your quarterback to do a tremendous amount, but you still have insurance that way with a guy like Ryan Tannehill that could come in and kind of seamlessly plug and play if need be, whether it be an injury reason or whether it be production and you don't want to give up on the season. So Tannehill could be an interesting piece that a team may add for depth right now. And then maybe let's see what happens. Because you need insurance, right, Jim? Like, you need insurance going into the season. Too many teams don't have a good enough backup to where even if they're having a successful year or a competitive year, to where, like, maybe or maybe not, they might be able to make the wild card by some wild chance, but then your starter goes down, and it's like, who do we got? Waterboy, come here. You're going in. Like, they just don't have an answer. So Tannehill would be a good guy to bring in. Even though he's 36 years old, you bring in a veteran, just like you mentioned Joe Flacco. He's no spring chicken,
no.
But at least he got to prove that he still has it in Cleveland, where that's kind of like where he got the little bit of an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so it's tough to figure it out where he could go, and you see some of the guys that actually found a spot I think it's interesting, because I remind my son too. He's a Chiefs fan. He's got Carson Wentz back there. So I'm like, I was like,
Good
you
for
better
Wentz.
hope that, Patrick Mahomes stays healthy in this.
I know
because you
what
don't want
Wentz
any
is
of that
thinking.
so.
I know what he's thinking.
Yeah.
He's like, listen, I get to back up Patrick Mahomes,
Yeah.
a guy who literally plays with one leg and not have to go in, and I could possibly win a championship.
Another championship
And
without
get
even
paid.
playing in the game again.
And
right?
get paid.
And get paid.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yes, sign me up.
Yeah, definitely. I think even a spot too. It depends because again, what's Ryan Tannehill kind of asking for? Is he still kind of asking?
Mm-hmm. Oh, at
himself
this
for
point,
more money?
at this
like
point,
the
you're
fact
not.
that he thinks he's like, I should be a starter.
Any
you know
one
what I
of
mean?
these free agents, you can't be asking for very much.
Because if you look at the Chargers, like you say, they're like going to be like the way their offense is. You got, the Michigan type of offense running the ball. J.K. Dobbins there and stuff like that.
Yep. Justin
Justin Herbert again, kind of he's confident and he could throw and run that offense in the past, but not asked to do a whole lot. So if Justin Herbert gets injured, you've got Easton Stick there and stuff. So which is fine.
Who I know the Chargers really do
But
like Easton
I'm just
Stick.
saying, something like that, like Ryan Tannehill, if you're especially competing and stuff like that, you've seen him run around off.
The only thing about that is I think because they really like Easton Stick so much that I don't think they would pursue Tannehill. That'd be the thing is because they want to keep Stick on the roster, and do you really want to keep Ryan Tannehill as a third option at that point? It's almost like we'll just leave him off. He'll still be there. Like that's why I feel like he's been out there for so long now. Nobody has knocked down the door or called him or even had any interest to bring him in, to the point where we're at the point now it's going to be based on injury for a lot of these guys, or where now that teams after the draft, after free agency, OTAs are starting to kick off. You got rookies practicing and whatnot, and some volunteer veterans that show up for your team. When we get to mandatory OTAs where it gets a little bit more serious, there's a little bit of hitting going on. There's some competitive nature there. Maybe someone pulls a hamstring. Maybe somebody, gets a major injury, and now you're down a guy there. That's when these guys are going to start to be called up and brought in. Or your GM has been evaluating up to this point to where they're like, well, what are our holes right now? Like, do we still have any glaring holes? Like, do we need depth pieces? Do we need starters even? After all this is said and done, then they're going to kind of dive into that free agent pool to correct that issue.
All right, so you see anybody else here worth talking about even too? Because a lot of them, again, like you said, are kind of guys that are, they're past their prime. Here's floating around there. I'm like,
bottom line, there's a lot of free agents that could definitely contribute to teams still. Like there's a couple of them for me where I'm just like, I get it, but man, was that guy really good? And Shaq Leonard, linebacker from formerly of the Colts, was with the Eagles last year. 29 years old still, but man, he had a back issue, and that's why a lot of people are back and neck issue, and that's really why people are shying away from him. But man, if a couple doctors, even two opinions give you and tell you, hey, listen, he's fine. Like, you have no worries. Like, he's 100% ready to go. Everything's healed. Constructually, he's good to go. Like, you give me that consent, I'm picking this guy up whether I need him to start or not. Like, this guy is too good of a player to just be sitting out in free agency. But I get the injury concern. Other than that, you look at a couple of guys that used to be Pro Bowlers, like a Jamal Adams and a J.C. Jackson, that are still out there. They're still 28 and 29 years old. It's not like they're over the hills, but nobody's bringing them in, really. I've heard rumors about J.C. Jackson possibly returning to the Patriots. I've heard him about going somewhere else. But nonetheless, the guy is still available, and no one's picked him up. So is it because of his down year with the Chargers where they shipped him to New England, and then he went to New England and still didn't do anything much different? So kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit there with a 28-year-old corner still available. Jamal Adams, another guy who's only 28, and a guy who is more seen as like an in-the-box safety. Yeah, he's done pretty well for himself, even in coverage, but he's not known for that. But a guy, if you need a guy that kind of like bring him, close to in the box, bring him close to the line of scrimmage and try to blow things up in the backfield, he's an excellent player still to this point. So, I mean, and there's other guys that we could talk about, but I'll just say this, that if your team is still in need of any positions, that there's still free agents that can come in, at least for the most part, at least just kind of like, Band-Aid that position for you. They might even come in and surprise a lot of people and have a great year, But then again, at the very least, they'll at least make that weakness not look so bad.
Yeah, I mean, so who knows? Again, we'll see as the season goes. Again, like you said, injuries are going to pop up. I think last season, even too, right in the preseason before the season even got started, so many injuries popping up. Where we've argued a lot of the different facts of not having the full contact and things, and less practices with pads on and preseason games as well, which helped contribute to some of that. And we'll see. It would be cool to see if like Hunter Renfrow got even another spot somewhere else and see where he would fit in some of these schemes.
I don't know how you feel about Hunter Renfrow, but I feel like that's a very interesting storyline for free agency. Is this guy was formerly a Pro Bowler at receiver, is extremely hard to even cover, and did a really good job when he was being used at with the Raiders, but now he's free to go anywhere, and his contract doesn't matter anymore because he was making $13 million last year. That you can bring him in on the cheap, and you got yourself a pretty good, darn good wide receiver, even for depth purposes. So what makes me think is why he's still out there is maybe teams have called, and maybe he's telling them that he might be thinking about retirement at this point, because it just doesn't make sense to me why there hasn't been like 6 teams or so calling for his services and he's already signed by now, because the guy is still young. The guy still can play, former Pro Bowler, like I was saying, and very productive too when utilized. So again, the only thing that I could think of is like, he's still healthy. So what else could it be? But maybe he's thinking about retirement, and that's why you don't hear too many rumors about him.
Yeah, so I mean, there you go. There's our list. There's a lot of different subjects that are being spoken about right here before the season gets started.
Right.
OTAs have gotten together. A lot of no-shows where everybody's asking the question too, what's going on? Potential holdouts, blah blah blah. Guys showing up where they've voiced their opinions that they do want another contract, like Jordan Love showing up and put in the work in, but has also voiced
nice.
the fact that he wanted to get his contract reworked. Which, I mean, what a scenario or kind of storyline for that guy, right? The whole fact that, traded up to get him, you're hearing right away that he's nowhere near ready. The whole debacle with Aaron Rodgers, yada, yada. Aaron Rodgers gone, and then now Jordan Love looks amazing, and now looking for, some a different deal here for some longevity, to where people that were questioning what was going on with this kid. You know what I mean? Is he going to be ready? Is he the guy? So it's an interesting story for them, and what a story for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, they no longer have those questions though anymore, right?
Yeah,
You look at what he was able to do as a full-fledged starter, and people are like, okay. All right, we're going to be okay, guys. We're going to be okay. There was some big-time supporters. Mike Tackett, our very own Mike Tackett, one of our OG know-it-alls, is a Packers fan, and he was all on board with Jordan Love, saying, I got no worries. The kid's going to do well. He's going to do great. And, yeah, it surprised me at least. Like, I didn't know he was going to do as good as he did. But, man, I guess you have confidence now that going forward that he's your guy, he's your answer, and this is a contract year for him too. So he's going to probably try to turn it up even more this season and become even better. So get ready, open up those checkbooks there, Green Bay, because you're going to need more than one to sign, because the quarterback market is through the roof now. Like anytime you sign a new deal now, it seems like the next contract is going to be breaking yet another record, another milestone for the NFL for that position. So it's going to be interesting to see how Green Bay, who usually isn't as big spenders, you know what I mean? Like they usually do an extremely good job of orchestrating and constructing contracts to where where they still keep that cap number somewhat low. So I'm very curious to see what they do with Jordan Love when in fact they do agree to a long-term extension.
Yeah, and that's even some of the questions that have been coming out, which I think is kind of funny now because media has been one of the things that have pushed this narrative, the fact that
no kidding,
next guy up should get paid the most here. So now they're even, when they're seeing some of these guys get paid, they're kind of like, now they're like, whoa, this kind of, maybe this has to stop. You know what I mean? Maybe this is a little out of hand, especially when they see some of the contracts that are getting thrown around. And namely, I think, we saw it with Daniel Jones' contract when, again, they weren't sure. The Giants had come out and said, we've done everything to screw this guy up, all this stuff. Then had a decent year, paid the guy, and since then, again, buyer's remorse. And so whoa, what did we do? Oh my goodness, now we're not sold on him and we got to get out of this. So I think that's a big thing there. And now when you see some of these guys that are up for these contracts, you're actually looking for them again. Dak Prescott around the corner, Trevor Lawrence, people talking about Tua, Jordan Love. Do you look at these guys and be like, oh, well, that guy has to be the highest paid, because it's his turn now, or is it again that really teams really need to start to evaluate these guys and these players need to start thinking about it and thinking about the team too as well, and what will set you guys up for success if you really want a championship that badly, and what will the going rate kind of be here instead of just saying let's break the bank every single time.
Well, that's the thing, though, too, is like it's a individual thing. The contracts are all individual, so nobody's ever thinking about the team first. That mentality has been long gone. Like that, I don't feel like that'll ever return. So I'll say this, when it comes to signing these bigger contracts for these quarterbacks, because you don't have an answer after this. I like to ask Dolphins fans a lot about this because I know that there's the fan base is split half and half on Tua, to where they're like, well, we don't want Tua anymore. Don't give that guy any big money. Don't keep him. Let's move on from him. Okay, if that's your viewpoint, what's your answer at quarterback? If you're going to move on from Tua, who's going to be your quarterback this year? Who's going to be your quarterback next year? Oh, you just draft one. Okay, it sounds simple, but even if you were to move on from Tua, who, mind you, when he's healthy, he has proven to the whole league that he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Now, you might scoff at that, and you might be like, that's a joke. Well, go and look at his stats. It speaks for itself. He's a good quarterback. He's a starting franchise caliber quarterback. He can get you wins. We've seen him have absolutely amazing games before. And yes, you could also point the fact that, he's had some bumhead, poor decision-making too that has cost a couple games here and there. But all in all, the dude is a franchise quarterback. So if you were to move on from him and just draft, let's just say, we'll go to next year's draft. Okay, cool. You draft his replacement. Now that quarterback is a rookie, mind you. If you think a rookie is going to come in and all of a sudden, no matter who it is going to just continue where Tua left off and get better, you're sadly mistaken. There's going to be a lot of bumps and bruises along the way, and there's no guarantee that he ends up becoming even as good as Tua. So it's a big risk. Unless you have a reason to do that, unless you have like Green Bay, because they've done a miraculous job of always having an answer. If and when they need to move on from a quarterback, they got a guy waiting in the wings. So far, it's paid off great for them. But that's not a guarantee. It's not as consistent as they've made it look like it is. So you look at all these teams. There are half the teams in the league think they have a quarterback to win. There's probably only 6 that absolutely have quarterbacks that can win them a Super Bowl. 16 think they got a quarterback that can win, and then everybody else is still trying to find the next guy. So if that doesn't show you or give you an idea of how important and how hard it is to find your answer, then I don't think anything will.
Yeah, and that's what it is. That's what's hard even, too, when you're trying to look at it money-wise. Again, because like you said, what do you have that's better down the pipeline?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, What? Okay, so then you're like, all right, you got me. So what do I pay you then? Do I really have to pay you the most though in the NFL right now?
Right.
Just to keep
I
your
get it.
services?
Listen.
Yeah, that's tough.
I understand nobody wants to pay those huge deals because it takes up like 30%, somewhere around there. It takes up 30% of your cap space, which is a tremendous amount. And you have less and less to pay to other positions or upgrade at other positions. So I get the hesitation of giving a big deal like that to someone, but unless you're already looking to go in a different direction or have an answer, you're forced to. These teams are forced to because the cap keeps going up every year. And that's really what it is because the cap is going to continue to go up every single year. You're going to start seeing these all positions are getting inflated. All of them.
Yeah,
like you look at the contract for Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yeah, I was going to say safety.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers safety. Like he just got the biggest contract ever for a safety. And don't get me wrong, I think he's a really good player. I think he's awesome, but the contract he got paid, sheesh, I don't know if any team would normally do that if the cap wasn't continually going up. So I think that's the real thing is until maybe the cap slows down but again, it's just like the NFL is a moneymaker every single year. So until that happens, I feel like that's where we're just going to continue to see guys, call it what you want, get overpaid, but it is the market. And that's what every team, every owner and GM are doing. They're just paying along the market to keep their guy in-house because they don't have an answer. So it sucks. Don't get me wrong. I get what everyone's talking about with Tua or even Jared Goff, because some people view him as a not as good of a quarterback, but he proved otherwise last year. That I get it. I do understand. Like, I'm not happy with paying any quarterback the kind of money that they're getting now. Like, honestly, like right now, like for some of the quarterbacks that like teams like Washington and Chicago that kind of retooled that position. So now they have rookie contracts where it's costing hardly anything to have a quarterback. They're able to spend money elsewhere, and it's great. Now they can build their team up. But when that, like 3-4 years, maybe even 5 years down the road where it's like, oh, snap. Well, we did a good job building the offense and defense, but, man, we got a lot of money into other positions. Now guess what? Now we have to give a huge mega deal to Caleb Williams. We got to give a huge mega deal to Jaden Daniels, Drake May. That the Pied Piper is going to be coming for that paycheck. So it's difficult to deal with. But again, I got to say that there are some phenomenal organizations that do a great job of manipulating the cap with contracts and being able to keep guys for the most part together. So I just hope that your team out there, like the Dolphins, like anybody in the future that's going to have to sign that quarterback position up, hopefully they got the right financial leaders in that front office.
All right, Joe, before we head out of here, why don't you tell everybody where they can find our show again and others like ours?
Very simple. You go to YouTube and you hit that subscribe button for us, and that's what you have to do. Football on the No Show. We're here every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. That's what we do. We're the most interactive NFL talk show out there. We love to prove it to everybody. We appreciate the know-it-alls that did chime in, that did drop a comment. Some jokes were said about the Giants, and I get it because it's coming from a Giants fan. But nonetheless, we really do appreciate the love. We appreciate the support. Keep the comments flowing. Show up next week. Listen, we'll stop talking about whatever topic we're talking about. If you guys want to talk about your team or a situation that's happening in the NFL or even like the league meetings, the more that kind of gets filtered out, we'll talk about it. So tune in next Wednesday night, 8:30.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you guys next time.
Join us next week from 8 till 10 Wednesday night for more Football on the No with Jim and Joe.